Well, good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome to another episode of Chapter and Verse. And I would like to add in there um, my apologies because this has to be the loudest outfit I think I have ever worn. I'm the only person up in the morning, and it is like my pants are loud. This is loud. I'm walking around thinking like I am waking up the neighbors. Anyways, so if you hear this rustling in the background, it is not the nor'easter that we're going to be talking about today. No, it is just the fabric choices of today. So, anyways, I want to welcome you to be a part of this. And as always, I always encourage you to say hi in the comment section. And that way boom, Lena, you have the pole position today. You jump in there and saying hi. I appreciate that so much. And others, it doesn't matter when you join us. That's always cool to be able to get those messages there. You know what? It's looking a little different right now today on my screen, but let's see if I can fix it up here. Nope, that did nothing good. Okay, so we're gonna go with that one instead. So maybe if I get rid of that, it'll help things. Okay, Justin, good morning as well. And I want to welcome everybody who is joining in our podcast version of this. We have this on YouTube on podcast. And also, I'm going to put in the notes section here how you can set your notifications that whenever these videos start, if you're saying like, oh, I forgot about this again, you know what? You can set a notification so that it will jump up right away on Facebook. These stay on Facebook for about a month, and so yeah, I'll put the notice there, and then that way you know what it is. Also, letting you know, yeah, this is a bit of a different view today. I had to kind of work with things a little differently today because over where I was planning on having it this morning, we have a bit of a fall project going on in our house, and so the whole family is getting involved in this thing. They're pretty excited about it, but anyways, that's just what's going on. So I want to welcome you also to fall, and the fall colors are starting to come out, layers. It's still quite warm here, so it's more of pretending that it's fall. I don't know. JB, welcome. I don't know what the weather's like out there in Ontario, but anyways, yeah, it's a little. It's still pretty warm here, and very much still in the forest fire season. That's what's going on. But as I've told other people, I've learned here in BC there's two seasons. There is the rainy season and forest fire season. So really, that's what it is. Anyways, we're going to jump into today. Today's going to be an interesting conversation. Probably one of my favorite texts in the Bible, to be honest with you. So I've tried. If you were to look at my notes, I have put the least amount of notes possible because as I was preparing for this, I'm like, oh. So I legit took it all out because I was like, this will go on for weeks. Literally, I could do a series pretty much on this passage, certainly this passage and a little bit more. But anyways, just to let you know that. JB, it's good to know it is bright, sunny, and warm in your neck of the woods. And so if you're I know we have people out in the Okanagan and we have people in different areas. So feel free to let us know what the weather's like there. That's cool too. All right, well, we're going to pray and then we're going to jump into today's session called I Believe God. Okay, cool. All right, let's pray. God, I want to thank you for today. I thank you that we're together. We do believe you, Lord. And in the midst of everything that's going on in the world, these are these reminders just how important it is to be in a constant relationship with you. So God, I just ask that you would be with us. Open up our eyes to your word. Let it speak to us and let us understand just how good things can turn bad and how bad things can turn ugly. But God, you're still in control. And we ask this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Okay, cool. All right. Well, we are in chapter 27. There's only 3 other sessions of this. As I'm preparing, I think I said this last week, as I'm preparing, I work ahead, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm at the end of Acts. And so I'm waffling on three ideas here as to what to do next. And so um, I may put out a poll or something like that. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna bring us into just a bit of a. We're gonna be starting at verse 13 in chapter 27, but I'm just gonna give a like mashed up version of verses 9 to 12. It's kind of skipping. If you're reading along and going, hey, you skip that, you skip it. I'm just trying to get the gist. You can look at the last session to be able to get an understanding of everything that was happening there. Okay, let's go on to verse 9. It says this. By now, much time had passed, and the voyage was already dangerous. Paul told them, men, I can see that this voyage is headed towards disaster. Well, that's fun. Okay, you always want that guy on your trip. Okay, so it is headed towards disaster and heavy loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, okay, catch that, winter in, so it's kind of like the same time of year right now, autumn, okay, this is important to catch up. So was unsustainable to winter in, the majority, Democratic vote apparently, decided to set sail hoping to reach Phoenix and winter there. Okay, verse verse 13. And if I've not told you this before, I love this mug. This is one of my favorite mugs. I can't see if I can. Yeah, there it is right there. So this mug here, you see a whole bunch of, you almost have to screenshot that. But that is actually a GPS coordinate of where in the Chilliwack River they took this clay and made this mug out of that. So I think it's kind of cool. It's one of my favorite mugs because it's just here in Chilliwack River. And there's an artisan here in Chilliwack that does that. Okay, cool. So, and for you on the podcast, sorry, you can't see that unless you're watching. Okay, verse 13, here we go. It says, when a gentle south wind sprang up. Okay, I almost think it's like, okay, let's just keep going. When a gentle south wind sprang up, they thought they had achieved their purpose. Yes, we'll be able to go to Phoenix and winter there. They weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. So, just going to give you a bit of a warning here. Going to give you fair warning, I guess is the best way to say it. And that today is going to be a lot of nautical stuff. And some of you are going, nautical. Okay, yeah, no, okay. So I know that was late, but I want us to be able to look at this. A lot of the preparation, I was like, what's that mean? What's that mean? I think that it's important for us as we're going through this that we understand Luke wrote it for a reason. So I think there's an accuracy and a veracity to what he's talking about. And so there's a lot of reason for that. But we may not understand what some of these terms mean. And you're going to come to find out that it actually matters. What I believe God wants to share today. I would not say it's hyper-contextualization. Some could say that. We talked about hyper-contextualization last week, talking about the fact that hyper-contextualization means to take something way out of context. But I think that there's some real life experience examples, we'll say that I believe that God is still speaking to us today about. So let's keep going with that. It says, they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. So the reason for weighing an anchor is I thought, okay, why are they throwing in an anchor? Actually, it's picking it up. See, this is why it's important. So by weighing anchor, it means that they actually weighed the boat with the anchor. They brought the anchor back into the boat so that they would be able to continue forward. So they're taking it off the seabed and they're moving forward. But they're also wanting to stay away from the open seas. Okay? Now, the last week we talked about it, the part of that I left out was the fact that it says that it was after the Day of Atonement. So this is autumn. Okay, so this is about this time of year, if not a little later. And if you remember, in BC, this is when we had the atmospheric rivers, crazy storms, This is when our rainy season's about to start, and so the wind picks up. Where I live here, it's a wind tunnel, so like it's just wind flying through there. I'll tell you, you in Ontario, you do unless you're near a tornado, you do not know what the winds are like here in BC when they're flying through the mountains. Anyways, so this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to avoid all of that stuff. Okay. Verse 14 says, "But before long, a fierce wind called the northeaster." Okay, so they're not. Luke's not telling us that so that we go, "Oh, the northeaster." No, no, no. This was something they all knew about. Oh, the northeaster came. It's like, oh, the atmospheric river came, or oh, the tornado came, or oh, the tsunami came, or oh. So they know what this thing is. Okay, the northeaster rushed down from the island. Since the ship was caught and unable to head into the wind, okay, again, another nautical term here, we gave way to it and were driven along. So, something to understand about the boats back then, which I did not know, is back in the first century, is that boat technology, boatology, I guess, or whatever, that they had not developed really significant sails that could tack. They just basically had wind sails, right? So you have wind. The idea is to have the wind at from your back, pushing you forward. And so now the wind is coming this way. So now those sails aren't really doing much, but you're trying to head into the wind. Okay. Why? Because you want to have the waves coming at you. You don't want to be broadside. Okay. Yeah, or even from behind, because then the waves are going to come crashing onto you here. So there was no power to steer into the wind, and so now they had lost total control. Okay, so this is just important to understand in what we're going to talk about in a few moments. It says, verse 16 says, "After running under the shelter of a little island called Cauda, we were barely able to get control of the skiff." Oh, the skiff. Well, the skiff is the tender. So here's what's kind of cool. As I'm reading it, I read the text, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to guess what the skiff is. I thought the skiff was like maybe a board that came out of the side of the boat, or on the front, on the bow, or something like this, or maybe on the stern for like getting on, embarking, disembarking, a plank, basically. I thought it was the plank. But no, it's a lifeboat. It's a tender. It would be on a rope, and it would be behind the ship, mainly for when the ship is at sea and can't get into shore. Then basically is a rowboat that you just get into it and then you bring it to shore, right? So that tender usually is just flopping behind the boat, right? Just kind of going along. If you're going that way, boat's going that way too, right? So they were barely able to get control of the skiff that was there. Okay. Then it says this: after hoisting it up, they used ropes and tackle and girded the ship. Again, something else I didn't know. Fearing that they would run aground on the Syrtis, I guess, they lowered the drift anchor, and in this way, they were driven along. Okay, so hoisting it up, again, we're talking about the skiff, the tender. So that is the portion that is now, they're hoisting it up. They're bringing that lifeboat into the boat, okay? Because here's the reason for it, is as they are losing control, remember, it's a boat. It is hollow in the middle. So as it takes on water, it's going to get heavier and heavier, and it could come to the point where it would actually become an anchor, okay? And so press pause on that. Let's just keep going, and then we're going to press rewind right to that mark right there, okay? So that's what that was about. So that would affect the ship. So they girded the ship. So what they would do is they'd use the ropes, they'd use the mast ropes, they'd use the tackle, all those things, and then they would go to the bow with this rope, and then they would let it go down from each side, and then come around, and then they would tie it. So they were basically making these like rope ties all the way through the ship to gird the ship, because back then they were afraid that like the storms would tear the boats apart. So by pulling these ropes around it, they were actually bracing it. It's almost like putting a brace on or something like this, or a tourniquet around this boat to make sure that it would stay in its place. Because it says that they were driven along. So now here's what's important. This is press rewind. Okay, so they are in this situation where they don't have any control. So basically, the wind is now controlling them, and their tender is at risk. So they bring it into the boat. And as I was reading that, I just thought about this. Again, this is just a great illustration that there are times, I believe, in our lives that when we are trusting God, we're kind of trusting God. And so we have that lifeboat out there. We have that escape measure that's just waiting for us. But the truth is that there are times that that very escape route, that safety net, that whatever, it stops us. It actually starts taking on water, and it can become its own anchor. It can take us down. It can slow us down. And then at the lifeboat on its own is actually healthy. It's fine in a controlled setting. But when it's in a crisis, there are times where you have a choice. You can either jettison the boat, cut the rope, and let it go, or maybe you can pull it up and save it for another time. Another time. And so I just want to encourage you with that maybe God is speaking to you and saying, you know what? Maybe you need to lift that up for a bit. Okay? Don't leave that out there, because in the storm you're going through, that is actually going to become a liability to you. So just like they did, they wanted to save the lifeboat at that time, at that point. But anyways, they want to save the lifeboat, and so that's basically what they did. Okay, verse 18, let's keep going. It says, because we were being severely battered by the storm, they began to jettison the cargo the next day. Okay, so the rationale behind that is that if the cargo is out, then okay, hopefully I just got a phone call on my computer, so I'm hoping this still worked out. And if it rang there, I apologize. I've never had that happen before. Please don't call me right now. Okay. Anyways, so the this idea that with the boat being in the water, by jettisoning it, the cargo, there's a bit of a choice to make. You kind of like weight, because weight allows you to not move as much, but weight brings you lower into the water. And so it's called displacement. So by getting rid of the cargo, it's lifting the boat up out of the water so that it's not going to be as much of a threat to take on water, which again, you can probably see the spiritual correlations that there are times in our lives where we have things that are weighing down our ships, weighing down our lives, and the storm is going on, and we're holding on for dear life, and we're trying to hold on to these things, and in reality, those things don't matter, right? When there's a fire in the house, what do I say? Get out of the house, because you're the most valuable thing, and if you can grab something, what are they going to grab? Photos, or grab something that's special to them. They want to hold on where they can. But sometimes those things, Carrie and I were somewhere where there was a fire. Person ran in because of an animal that was left in where they were staying, and he came out and never found the animal, and he perished. Right? So there are times where we think something is really important, but in the midst of the storm, maybe not. Okay, let's keep going on with that. Okay, so it says, verse 19 says, on the third day, okay, which we're seeing some correlation between Luke talking about the Gospel of Luke with Jesus and with Paul. Not that he's referring to Paul and saying Paul's like the Messiah, but I do see some what I'll call shadows of just, like, oh, I've seen that before, or a little deja kind of vus, okay, type thing. Okay, so it says on the third day they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. So they threw cargo over. Now they're throwing tackle over. Now remember, the tackle, some of the tackle, which would be the rigging, it would be like their nets, anything for fishing and stuff like this. So that was actually girding some of the ship here. So that now they're actually getting rid of the tackle, rid of those things, which were really the promise of them having sustained food, right? So they would be fishing while they were going along to be able to save everything else that they have on there. So now by throwing off the tackle, they're saying, you know what? Eating isn't even worth it, right? So that's just how bad the storm is. And again, you'll notice there's these layers of dependency and layers of survival, right? What's worth it to get rid of to be able to continue to survive? Again, I think there's some correlations in our own lives on that. Okay, let's keep going. It says this: for many days, neither sun nor stars appeared, and the severe storm kept raging. Finally, all hope was fading, and we would be saved. It was fading. I want to tell you something. I don't know which way to do this. Okay, you know what? I'm making a choice. So someone want to put this in the chat room. That would be great. Two things that are extremely contagious. Extremely contagious. Carrie and I were talking about this last week. Hope and hopelessness. Hope is extremely contagious and is necessary for courage, really. That for people to see and have hope that something's going to happen, whether it's in an army or whether it's a crisis you're going through, believing God for something, right? Hope is contagious. Someone says, I'm believing this for you. That does something, that stirs something up in you, right? But so does hopelessness. Hopelessness is extremely contagious. And once hopelessness starts to get out, it gets out like a mold. It's like a cancer. It just spreads like wildfire, right? And I just want to say that from my perspective and what I've seen and what I've experienced in my own life too, I find that hopelessness, okay, hopelessness is much more contagious than hope. They're still contagious, but hopelessness. And so we see here it's leaking, it's fading, and it's going out, okay, really fast here. Verse 21 says this. It says, since they had been without food for a long time, okay, remember they got rid of the cargo, they got rid of or some of the cargo, you'll find, and they got rid of all their tackle supplies and stuff. Paul then stood up among them and said, you men should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete and sustain this damage and loss. Now I urge you, okay, let me back up. Okay, I want you to understand the context of what he's saying here. There's two ways that this can be read. There's this way. There's the way he says, you men should have followed my advice not to, what do I sound like from Alabama? You man? Okay, but you men should have followed my advice and not, oh no, I got to go back to Hebrew kind of. You men should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete and sustain this damage and loss. Okay, that's one way of saying it. But I think it's this way because of what we're going to read afterwards. Paul says, you men should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete and sustain this damage and loss. All of this could have been prevented, is basically what he's saying. Now, I urge you to take courage because there will be no loss of any of your lives, but only of the ship. Okay? So Paul is now saying this. He's saying, like, take courage because there's no loss of any of your lives, but only of the ship. It's not like a told you so kind of thing, right? I think he's saying, now will you believe me? Like I told you this would happen. It's happened. But now I'm going to tell you this, that we're just going to lose the ship. We're not going to lose the lives. I'm wanting you to trust me. And he says in verse 23, for last night, an angel of the God I belong to and serve, which I love. I don't know if I'll have time to get into that. For last night, an angel of the God I belong to and serve stood by me and said, don't be afraid, Paul. It is necessary for you to appear before Caesar. And indeed, God has graciously given you all those who are sailing with you. Okay? I love this. God said to Paul, basically, I want everybody on the ship to know, and you'll find out there's a lot of people on this ship, but I want everybody on the ship to know that it's not just that they're at the wrong place at the wrong time, kind of like what you think of with Jonah, like on the ship, and Jonah's the problem. Okay, let's get rid of him. He's saying you're not bystanders. You are all participants in God's plan. You're all participants in that. And I want to say that to you because sometimes you feel as though, like, why is God allowing this to take place? Why is this happening? And the truth is that God doesn't have you as just a spectator in what's going on. You're a participant in his plan. You've got a part to play in what's going on. Verse 25 says this. Remember, he talked about this earlier, and he says, don't be afraid, right? And he says, so take courage, take heart. Remember, just a few verses ago, they were losing heart. They had lost hope. They were hopeless. And he's saying, no, find hope. Have courage, okay? Do not fear. He says, because, catch these three words, awesome words. I believe God. I believe God. Someone put that in the comment section if you believe that today. There, in the midst of the crazy, in the midst of the horrendous things that are happening, you look at what's going on. What has happened in the last week? All it has done is it's opened up our eyes a smidgen to what's actually happening around us. That we talk all about one event that took place, but the other events that took place that were just tragic as well, they didn't even get mentioned. So there is so much going on out there that the truth is that our eyes are just being opened up a little bit, and it's much easier to keep your eyes closed because then you don't have to believe what's going on is actually going on. But Paul is saying basically to those people on the ship, open up your eyes. I believe God. Okay? I believe God. The situation you're going through, I just want to let you know today. I believe God. Right? Situation I'm going through or anybody else, I believe God. That's what you have to tell yourself, right? Every single day that you get up, like whatever's going on, whatever storm's happening, whatever winds are hitting you, you pull up that tender and the skiff and all that, and you're like, right? But I believe God. Okay, all right. And I believe we better keep going. That it will be just the way it was told to me. But we have to run aground on some island. When the 14th night came, okay, we were drifting in the Adriatic Sea. That basically, the Craig McKibben version is they have been there for a long time, okay? And about at midnight, the sailors thought they were approaching land. They took soundings and found it to be 120 feet deep. And I was like, soundings? That's interesting. Wow, how did they do soundings? How do they know all of that stuff back in that day? So I looked it up, and maybe they did, but that's not what they were doing. So I was like, oh, okay. So what it was at the time is the practice was that they would have this weighted rope, and they had used the rope so much that they just knew its characteristics and such. So it would be weighted, and they would drop it, and there would be markings, and it's called fathoms. Okay, so I don't want to get all into the details of it, but you may have heard of it, like, or 20,000 leagues under the sea. Like, those were just all measurements, right? Fathoms, leagues. And so, but that fathom, that's how they would get, there would be knots in that rope as well. So you'd be able to know based on speed. Okay, that's how you got knots. Okay, I know, it's interesting. So you would have, but this weighted rope would go down, and you would be able to see how deep it was, right? So that's basically what it was. Okay, so then when they had sailed a little farther and sounded again, dropped the rope, they found it to be 90 feet deep. Then, fearing we might run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern. In English, the back, okay? The stern. Bow, okay, bow, think of it that way. The stern, the opposite. And then if you want to know the other ones, port is always on your left because it ends with a T and it's 4 letters, I know. That's the only way I can remember it. So port and starboard. Okay. So back at the stern, okay, they dropped 4 anchors, okay, to be able to do that. They dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight to come. Catch the word daylight, not morning, daylight to come. Some sailors tried to escape from the 4 the 4 anchors they dropped was just to slow the ship down and also to point the bow towards towards the shore. Right when they drop anchors in the midst of a storm, it's to put the bow in towards the waves coming in, but in the anchors in this case, it's to bring them into shore and not let them go broadside and hit rocks. Okay. So, praying for daylight to come. Some sailors tried to escape from the ship. They had let down the skiff into the sea. Now you know what it is, so it doesn't matter. Pretending that they were going to put out anchors from the bow. Paul said to the centurion and soldiers, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut the ropes holding the skiff and let it drop away. Okay? I love the fact that now the centurions and the soldiers are believing Paul, but also the fact that they cut the ropes of the skiff, got rid of it. Now, if they had brought the prisoners and some of the prisoners had got away, their lives would be at stake anyways. But also the skiff idea, again, bringing us back to that story, I think some of you maybe already correlated it, that there are times even to get rid of that. It's when you are, it's like you basically, burn the ships kind of thing when you land on a new island because we're not going back, right? We're going to see this thing through. That's basically what's happened in this case. And I believe that in our lives we need to do the same. When it was about daylight, meaning we think it's morning, it has been dark for 14 days. It is still storming, okay? When think it was daylight, Paul urged them to all take food, saying, today is the 14th day that you have been waiting and going without food, having eaten nothing. So I urge you to take some food, for this is for your survival, since none of you will lose a hair from your head. After he said these things and had taken some bread, he gave thanks to God in the presence of all of them, and after he broke it, he began to eat. Again, this correlation, right? They were all encouraged and took food themselves. In all, there was 276 of us on the ship. Okay, it's like a cruise line. When they had eaten enough, they began to lighten the ship by throwing the grain overboard. So again, they had the cargo and they were getting rid of that. Now they're getting rid of the grain. That's their money. That is their money. Remember, the centurion had found a commercial ship going to Italy. So that's why they're on that ship. So they're not on a army ship. So this guy is trying to save his boat because that's his livelihood. There's no insurance, right? And so that's why that's really important there. But now they're they're jettisoning their future security. All right, it is 7 o'clock, so we're bringing this to a close. But I just want to encourage you today, knowing that sometimes you need to lead with courage in the midst of a crisis, right? And thank God that he's with you in the midst of the trials. But you need to trust God over the circumstances that you're going through. That's just stuff that I wanted to nail out on today. All right, next week we deal with the shipwreck. Baby, this ship is not going to last. Spoiler alert, it's not going to last. Again, a reminder, I'll let you know, but put notifications on your phone, and in that way we'll be able to let you know when these are coming on. But always, I love to end with some little quip, wisdom, and whatnot. And so I just want to ask you this question. What's big and white and can't climb a tree? What's big and white and can't climb a tree? A fridge. All right, we'll see you next time. And until then, God be with you. Keep your bows facing the storm. And then, you know what? Hold on to what you need to. Get rid of what you need to. But always trust in God, because I believe God. God bless you. Bye.